Have you ever wondered what it feels like at the bottom of the deep ocean, where light can't reach, where every sound is swallowed by tons of icy water? I used to think I was strong, that nothing beneath the sea could scare me. But that was before I set foot on the nuclear submarine USS Gato. I still remember the first sensation when the heavy steel door slammed shut behind me, separating me from the outside world. The air inside the ship was thick, the smell of metal machine oil and long-standing mildew clinging to every breath. The narrow corridors, the dim yellow lights, the rumbling of the machinery, all seemed to whisper to me about something wrong, a secret that only those who have lived deep beneath the sea can understand. I don't know when the unease began to creep into my mind. Maybe it was from the mysterious knocking that echoed in the middle of the night, or from the bewildered eyes of my comrades who were always strong. Maybe it was from the moment I realized that in this deep ocean, humans are not always the predators. That night, as the ship plunged into eternal darkness, I felt something waiting for us ahead. Something that didn't belong to this world. And I know if you're brave enough to hear this story to the end, you'll never look at the ocean with the same eyes again. Are you ready? Join me aboard the USS Gato, where all the mysteries begin. The oppressive beginning, as told by Lieutenant Jacob Harris, Aero 520, the threshold of silence. I entered the main corridor as the warning lights shifted from white to a dim red, the signal for absolute silence mode. The hum of the ventilation fans faded. All that remained was the heavy thumping of my own heart. The steel hull creaked a sharp metallic sound as if something inside was being squeezed. I stopped pressing my hand against the freezing wall. It felt hollow, as if something was stirring deep within the metal. 0531. The first knocks. The torpedo bay lay ahead. As I passed 3 knocks, echoed slow, deliberate. Clang, clang, clang. Was the sound coming from inside the hull or outside? I couldn't tell. My hand instinctively reached for the cold pistol at my side, as if a block of iron was gripping my wrist. 00. The control room. In the pale blue glow of the sonar screens, Miller's face was ghostly white. He whispered, "Sir." The radar's picking up a return signal, right next to the hull, but there's nothing on the map. I leaned in a blurry interference ring, spun, vanished, then reappeared elsewhere, always exactly 3 knocks away. I marked the coordinates, but the headphones only hissed like someone gasping for breath. SSN-615, the silent breakfast. The canteen was packed, but no one spoke. Cutlery clinked against metal trays, each sound as lonely as a coffin's knock. I swallowed a mouthful of cold coffee. The taste of machine oil crept down my throat. At the far end, Fry, the loudest mechanic on the boat, suddenly stood up, eyes darting. He glanced back at the dark hatchway, lips trembling. "There's someone out there." No one dared look. The spoon slipped from my fingers, clattering to the floor, clink. Everyone held their breath. 0802, Corridor 4. The sub dove past 300 meters. The pressure made the steel hull groan like it was weeping. The fluorescent lights flickered, casting shifting patches of light and shadow. I saw my shadow stretch along the wall, but in a split-second flash, it had 3 shoulders. A chill ran down my spine. I blinked, only my familiar outline remained. The knocking returned, this time right behind me, loud enough to make the bolts tremble. Stairway to 45, the sleeping quarters. I stopped by Turner's cabin, the chief engineer, to ask about the electrical issues. The sliding door opened. The room was empty. His reading lamp was on his Bible, open to the book of Revelation. On the pillow, a deep indentation, as if someone had just been sitting there seconds before I arrived. A drop of salty water fell onto the page, spreading into a dark stain. We were deep underwater. So where did this water come from? 0907, emergency briefing. I reported to the commander, Captain Monroe. He listened, his face taut as wire. "Continue the mission. Don't let the crew panic." But as he signed off, his hand trembled. I noticed the cold sweat on his back even before the error lights began to flicker above us. 10:16, absolute darkness. The lights jumped and then went out completely. In those 6 seconds of pitch black, I could hear every trembling breath, even the soft thumping beneath the floor, like bare feet walking along the hull. When the backup lights flickered on, the corridor was empty, but on the floor, small wet footprints trailed toward the torpedo bay. I knelt to touch them. The water was icy cold, as if it had been drawn straight from the ocean's depths into my palm. I haven't told anyone, but in that moment I understood those knocks weren't trying to get in. They were letting us know that we were the ones trapped inside, and something out there or right here among us was patiently waiting. That morning the mess hall was dead silent. I sipped my coffee trying to shake off the fatigue, but the smell of machine oil and metal made my stomach churn. "Did you hear anything last night?" Miller leaned in close, his eyes ringed with exhaustion. "You mean the knocking?" I replied, lowering my voice. Miller swallowed hard. 3 knocks. Each time exactly 12 seconds apart. I was about to ask more when the intercom crackled Lieutenant Harris to the engine room immediately. The officer on duty sounded tense as a wire. My heart sank. The morning shift belonged to Turner. 09:35, outside the engine room. Miller, Fry, and I stood before the heavy steel door, slightly ajar. Inside, the fluorescent lights flickered erratically. Fry glanced at me. "You sure Turner's in there? That guy's never late by even half a minute?" I tried to reassure them, though I was really trying to reassure myself. I took a deep breath and pushed the door open. A blast of cold air hit my face like a slap. Sweat instantly froze on my neck. "Turner," I called out. No answer, just the drone of the fans. His protective suit still hung neatly, his logbook lay open on the table. The coffee was still steaming faintly, almost mockingly. Miller muttered, "He was just here." Aero 942, security camera room. I rewound the tape. Turner appeared at 08:47. He touched a pipe, gave a wry smile to the camera. Then he walked toward the corner, the one the light couldn't reach. There, that dark spot, Fry pointed. Suddenly, the screen glitched, black shadows sweeping across like octopus tentacles. 3 seconds later, the image returned, and Turner was gone. No sound, no struggle. I could hear my heartbeat pounding in my temples. "Impossible!" Miller stared at me wide-eyed. "What are we supposed to tell the crew?" I didn't answer. A cold thought crept in. If Turner didn't leave on his own, then what? Took him. 09:55, back in the engine room. We searched under every shelf. As I bent down by the coolant pipe, a soft knocking came from behind the steel wall. Knock, knock, knock. 3 knocks, exactly 12 seconds apart, Fry stammered. "Someone, or something, it's answering us." I pressed my ear to the wall. It was ice cold. Suddenly the knocking was replaced by a faint whisper, the words warped, as if echoing through hundreds of meters of water, Hiri. I jerked back, nearly falling. For a moment I saw Fry cover his mouth, and Miller's eyes were red on the verge of tears. On the floor, a salty trail of water began to stretch out of the engine room. I knelt down, my fingertips numb from the cold. Seawater. At 300 meters deep, how did it get in here? 10:20, main corridor. We followed the trail. It stopped at the torpedo bay door, then vanished as if it had evaporated. I touched the door's edge, freezing. Miller whispered, "If Turner's in there, no one's opened this bay except the duty shift." I cut him off. But deep down, a trembling thought echoed. Or maybe something else opened it. From the other side. 12 onwards. Emergency report. I reported everything to Captain Monroe in the command room. The red light cast deep shadows across his face. He was silent for a long time. "Harris," he rasped. "You understand the consequences if panic spreads." "I understand, Captain, but our man is gone." I saw his hand tremble as he signed the workplace accident report. A lie, the paper seemed to scream those words. 2318, officers' quarters. I lay there, eyes wide open. I imagined Turner trapped somewhere between the steel layers, pounding on the hull for help. The thought made it hard to breathe. Thump, thump. Not my heartbeat, but footsteps in the corridor. They stopped outside my door. 4. 5 seconds of suffocating silence. Then knock, knock, knock. 3 knocks. 12 seconds pass. It repeats. I gripped my pistol in the dark, cold sweat pouring down. A whisper pressed against the metal wall. "Harris, open." I froze. It was Turner's voice, choked, as if his mouth was full of seawater. In that moment, I understood on this ship the line between the living and something else had been erased, and tonight was only the beginning. After Turner's inexplicable death, the submarine plunged into a delirium. I record here 6 moments each, a knife slash to our nerves, so that if anyone survives this patrol, they'll know what they're up against. 1905. I was checking the lighting system when all the fluorescent lights suddenly went out just for a heartbeat, then flickered back on. But there were no bulbs in the sockets. The white light seemed to seep from the steel walls themselves. Miller stammered, I already took out all the bulbs to replace them, sir. I looked up, the light was steady with no source, no sockets. 2 minutes later, the lights went out again. When we turned on our flashlights, the new bulbs were already back in the fixtures, sparkling with glass dust. 1937. I checked the officer's washroom. The mirror was covered in a thin layer of salty mist. When I wiped it, the reflection didn't show the bathroom, but the control room Monroe was hunched over, and behind him was me standing motionless. I spun around. Behind me was just a bare steel wall. Looking back at the mirror, the image vanished, revealing my own pale face. But the handprint I'd left on the glass had become 3 concentric circles like waves trying to swallow the surface. 2010. The sonar team reported strange echoes. I put on the headphones. A steady 3 kHz wave suddenly twisted into a giggling sound, children's laughter echoing through the sea. Fry screamed, ripping off the headphones. "Get out of my head!" I heard it clearly through the speakers. Ha! 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 Out of breath yet. That sound didn't come from outside the hull. It crawled through the signal wires like poison in the ship's veins. 2122. The torpedo bay was noisy with safety valves venting steam. When we arrived, everything was dead silent. On the casing of torpedo number 5, a long dent had appeared deep enough to expose the titanium core shaped like 5 fingers. I placed my hand on it. The metal was warm like living flesh. At that moment, the torpedo vibrated slightly, emitting a low hum like breathing. Fry collapsed to the floor. "This thing... it's growing, sir." A drop of black water seeped from the well, dripped onto my shoe, and ate through the leather in seconds. 22:00. The central clock panel lost pressure. All the hour hands spun backward steadily in sync, while the minute hands moved forward as usual. My wristwatch also spun backward. I took it off. The inside of the glass was fogged, and the word "help" was scratched into the condensation with a thin nail. Before I could react, a second word appeared inside. Miller shivered. "Where is our time?" "Going, sir, 23:14. The red combat lights came on as everyone gathered in the common room. Suddenly, the hull became a movie screen showing Turner in his protective suit walking down the corridor, followed by a small shadow half his size. A bright red subtitle scrolled across "Open Me." I shouted for the control room to cut the power, but the entire network was locked. The image suddenly expanded, covering the ceiling and floor. The shadow stretched into a hand that touched a sailor's leg. He convulsed, eyes bulging, mouth foaming with water mixed with sea sand. Panic erupted. I drew my pistol and shot out the red lights. The images vanished, but water and sand still dripped onto the floor, seeping into the steel welds like black rain. By midnight, the submarine was no longer a vessel. It was a living creature, breathing salt vapor and whispering in metal. I write this in the dim, dying light of my flashlight. If I disappear tomorrow, let the reader remember: don't knock 3 times, don't look in the mirror, and don't trust the clock hands. The ocean is not empty. It's just waiting for a chance to return what humanity has buried in its depths. After the relentless supernatural phenomena, I thought nothing could be worse. I was wrong. On the 3rd night, at 450 meters deep, we were forced to confront not just what was lurking on the ship, but the fear that was gnawing at everyone's sanity. I divide this part into 5 moments, each moment like a step leading straight down to hell. 10:32. The medical bay echoed with frantic pounding. I rushed over, finding Petty Officer Fry, always the tough one, being restrained by 3 sailors. "Get out of my head, it's singing in my ears," Fry hissed, scratching his skin raw. The room's lights were blood red. In my ear, I could indeed hear a childish hum, small but sharp as a needle. "Sedate him," I ordered. The medic injected ketamine. As the needle touched his skin, Fry suddenly went silent. He rolled his eyes to look at me, a twisted smile on his face. "Harris, you hear it too, don't you?" The words hit me like a punch to the chest. I didn't answer. As the drug took effect, Fry went limp, but his lips still moved to the invisible melody. 8:01:10. I reported to Captain Monroe. "If we don't isolate the source of the singing, the whole crew will go mad." He nodded. For the first time I saw him as truly old. "Cut all internal audio, disable the speakers, limit radio communication," he rasped. "And Harris, don't let anyone know I'm afraid. I understood when the leader trembles, the whole pack will fall apart." But throughout the corridors, the piercing laughter kept seeping out of the cracks even after we pulled the fuses on the audio system. That thing was using the ship itself as a voice box. Or 2, or 5. The airlock indicator flashed the location between the hull and the launch tube. The camera showed sea mist swirling inside even though the compartment was completely sealed, Miller whispered in my ear. "If it spills over into the torpedo room, the pressure differential will." Before he could finish, a child's singing burst through the ventilation system. "Open the door. Come out and play. 3 times. Knock." On reflex, I fired 3 shots into the lock, then secured the door with a secondary brace. The metal echo reverberated as if someone was knocking back from behind with the same rhythm of the bullets. Miller clutched his head, babbling incoherently. "We just answered it, Lieutenant. 0300. The reactor reported thermal fluctuations, the alarm bell, silent." I and 3 engineers crawled into the auxiliary control room, lit only by the flickering blue screens. On the observation glass, instead of numbers, a red distorted message appeared. Deeper still. "Disable automatic switch to manual," I shouted. Engineer Velasquez had just pulled the emergency lever when it snapped off like soft wax. Salt water sprayed from the broken end, hissing with a familiar laugh. The room reeked of seaweed. A small shadow darted across the monitor light, too fast to see clearly, leaving only a faint wet streak. I raised my gun, my heart pounding like a hammer. What good would shooting at water do? Velasquez trembled. "Sir, the ship isn't responding. It's diving on its own." The pressure gauge dropped. We were being pulled down as if the ship's body was obeying someone else's command. 0412, depth 500 m. The hull groaned terribly. I made a decision: activate the emergency air bubble, forcing the ship to bounce up even at the risk of rupturing the pipes. Miller and Medic Spencer released the pressure valve. As I turned the lock, I heard knocking behind me. Knock, knock, knock. 12 seconds passed. It repeated. "Ignore it," I shouted, turning it all the way. Compressed air burst out the ship, shuddering upwards 20 meters, then stopping short. The system clicked like it was being strangled. Spencer burst into tears. "It's holding onto the ship, Lieutenant." The auxiliary lights flickered, shining directly on the ceiling. Hundreds of children's handprints were embossed on the steel, small pails shimmering with every vibration. 500. Suddenly, everything was quiet. The lights were steady, the clocks turned forward, the pressure gauge normal. The ship was obedient as if nothing had happened. The crew looked at each other, no one daring to breathe. I remembered Fry still tied up in the medical bay and ran to check. The infirmary was empty. The leather straps chewed through the walls, stained with seawater. On the bed was a scrap of gauze, written in thin blood. "It's just a game," I shouted for Monroe. The reply was a child's voice over the intercom, sweet and smooth. "The game is reaching its final act. Are you ready, Harris?" My heart dropped into a cold void. I understood the real storm was still gathering ahead, and we had just lost our last chance to escape. I closed the log at 0511. The ship was eerily quiet, like the flat sea before a tsunami. If anyone reads this, remember, fear doesn't kill us. The silence after it is the final blade. I used to believe in technical explanations until this morning. For the past 4 hours, we've been peeling back the metal skin of the USS Gato and discovering what lies beneath not bolts and screws, but guilt. 05:45. The propulsion system suddenly leaked damp salt trickling down the length of Corridor 2. The trail ended at a sealed bulkhead. Miller and I, wielding welding torches, cut through the wall. Inside was a secret void not on any of the ship's blueprints. Our flashlights swept across a cramped chamber, lead-lined walls, a floor covered in black algae, and in the center, a 7-layered steel door etched with ancient Latin symbols. A nuclear submarine hiding a lead chamber to shield what? 0602. Inside the lead chamber, we found a plastic-wrapped wooden crate. Inside, a top-secret mission log, the ink blurred by salt. The last entries were hastily written by someone else. Specimen W19 submersion children. Living conditions stable, requires temperature. Watch 4 GXC. If leakage occurs, eliminate the entire crew to prevent memory contamination. I read my blood freezing. Submersion. Children who were submerged, who was raising them on a nuclear submarine. Miller trembled. Harris the singing. It's them. 6:30. We breached the steel door. Inside was an egg-shaped pressure tank 4 meters long with thick glass and murky, smoky water. The gauge on the lid read 2 degrees C, but the needle jumped erratically. The emergency lights cast shadows, revealing 7 small figures suspended in the water wires plugged all over their bodies. As the light shone closer, their cloudy eyes opened wide. One pressed its face against the glass, its lips moving. 3 times. Knock. The glass vibrated. Knock, knock, knock. My heart froze. The submersion children weren't dead. They woke up when the ship went deep enough. 6:42. An ancient computer was wired directly to the tank. The screen flipped to a coded file, Neptune O. Skimming through. 1968. The U.S. Navy recovered a biological entity in the Mariana Trench, a group of children adrift in the wreckage of a Soviet submarine. The species breathes through memory, absorbing human voices, reflecting through any metal structure containing seawater. Goal: research low-frequency psychological warfare. Final directive: if the species escapes, scuttle the carrier vessel. It hit me the Gato wasn't a patrol ship, but a drifting cage, and the depth of 500 mem triggered their biological reflex. Or 6:58. The overhead lights went out. From the mist, a child rose right in front of me, skin like wax, no lungs, a breathing tube dangling. It opened its mouth. Instead of sound, memories flooded my mind. Images of them being forced into the steel compartment, their parents struggling. Lullabies twisted into sonar signals. The absolute silence order imposed on their souls. The icy flood of memories made me fall to my knees. The child touched my visor, its eyes vacant. I heard my own voice singing the lullaby my mother used to sing, even though I didn't open my mouth. 0710. The ship's sinking alarm blared, this time with sound. The entire Gato vibrated its nose, diving straight into the abyss. I staggered back to the command room. Monroe lay unconscious, salt water gurgling in his throat. On the windshield, the children had printed their small hands, spelling out, "Go deeper with us." Miller screamed. "They're pushing the reactor past its limit. We're going to explode." In desperation, I opened the SOS channel. Instead of Morse code, the speakers broadcast. Children's laughter echoing across the Pacific. The radar picked up multiple echoes, friendly ships approaching. No, they were memory echoes spreading through the seawater, calling for more audience to the tragedy. Amid the chaos, I wrote the final lines in the electronic log, sliding my hand to sign the code. Neptune O, the self-destruct order. If the system still hears me in 2 minutes, the Gato will become a column of steam at the bottom of the ocean, burying the sea's children, along with the secrets they crave to share. 0712. The self-destruct countdown light turned green. The children outside the glass stopped singing, looking at me curiously. A little girl raised her finger, pointing for exactly 12 seconds, then smiled. I understood the final message: fear isn't the end. The horror is the truth we're about to leave for those on the surface. If anyone finds this black box, please heed 3 warnings. Don't look for the USS Gato. Don't answer any 3-knock signals from the bottom of the sea. Let the memories sink deep, because the sea never forgets. I thought I had closed every door when I activated Neptune O. But the ocean has never allowed mankind to write its ending. What happened in the final 12 minutes of the countdown and after was a chain of paradoxes that left me unable to tell what was real and what was a forced memory. 07:12:48. The self-destruct timer on the control panel blinked. 01:12. At the same time, a secondary screen lit up displaying +01, 12-1 counter counting down, 1 counting up. The negative counter seconds left until detonation. The positive counter seconds to resurrection. Miller looked at me, voice cracking. If they reverse time again, we'll be trapped between two explosions. One that's happened, one that hasn't yet. A child pressed its cheek to the glass eyes shining. It placed its hand on the surface. The second hand on the positive timer suddenly stopped. The negative timer kept ticking. 07, 13, 30. Steam and seaweed spewed backward through the vents swirling around us like a miniature cyclone. In the shrill noise, I heard my own voice repeating every order I'd given over the past 3 days, played in reverse like a rewound cassette tape. Kier B, Raya C. Go deeper again. That sound didn't just hit my ears. It crawled under my skin, rattling my bones. I fired wildly at the speakers. Each bullet pierced the steel, creating 3 echoing knocks. Knock, knock, knock. Exactly every 12 seconds. The children answered with a long, ringing laugh, letting me know they were using the gunshots themselves to open the compartment. 07, 14, 20. The evacuation lights suddenly turned green. Torpedo tube 4, which had been locked tight, began to creak open. Outside was the pure black of the ocean. The pressure enough to crush bone. The PA system previously cut came back on Captain Monroe's voice, echoing strangely deep, "Harris, get out. Just you." I looked down at the control room. Monroe was still unconscious, mouth foaming with water. That voice was a memory echo wearing the captain's skin. I hesitated. If I jumped into the tube, I'd probably die instantly, but maybe... Save the rest. Miller shook his head in despair. It wants you out so it can take the ship. 07, 15, 00. The negative timer hit 0000, no explosion. Instead, a massive heartbeat reverberated through the hull like the pulse of some ancient creature. All the lights went out. Only a faint blue phosphorescence crawled along the corridors. The children vanished from the glass. The reactor hummed, then fell silent. Every engine, every bolt, every speck of dust stopped. Gato became a perfect vacuum chamber. In the absolute silence, I could hear the drip of water. Drip, drip. The start of a new 12-second cycle. The positive timer flickered back on, now showing 12:00. Time reversed. Suddenly, I was standing in the corridor holding a logbook I'd never written. Miller in front of me dissolved into salt dust. Captain Monroe sat bolt upright, eyes rolled back, screaming a single word. Repeat. The ship shuddered, splitting in two. No merging, 2 versions of the Gato overlapped, one shattered, one intact. The scene blurred as if projected on water. I understood Neptune O didn't destroy the ship, it split it from the original timeline, letting the sea attach it to whichever reality it pleased. Final moment. Where am I, darkness? No more sounds, not even the 3 knocks. I opened my eyes on the surface under a starry sky. I was sitting in a life raft, the black box clutched to my chest. In the distance, the rusted hull of the submarine floated half-submerged as if it had been there for a century. A search helicopter circled its spotlight, shining right on me. The loudspeaker blared Lieutenant Jacob Harris. "Stay where you are." I stood about to wave when the water beside the raft began to bubble. 3 bubbles rose. 12 seconds. Again. The sky's spotlight snapped off. The rotor noise vanished as if the helicopter had never existed. I froze. The black box in my hands vibrated softly, emitting a burst of children's laughter. Its tiny screen lit up, green letters appearing. Round 2. Player 1 ready. I understood I had escaped. Into the next round. The sea hadn't let me go, only changed the stage from 450 meters deep to the calm surface where more witnesses would hear the children's song. I looked out at the endless black around me. Could I throw the black box away? Could I jump in after it? Or would I go ashore, bringing this story to humanity, unwittingly spreading the memory to millions? I haven't decided. All I know is that at the bottom of the raft, seawater is seeping in, tracing glowing letters under the moon knock. The game has never ended, and perhaps the storyteller is the water itself.